Hey everybody, welcome to the studio of Carini Arts. Check out cariniarts.com for my shop, my blog, and my podcast. Your support makes what I do possible, in particular because I'm dealing with a traumatic brain injury and I've been struggling to get back to normal function. I'm a little slower and have a little trouble with communication at times, so apologies if I am still not back to my normal self. But for today's talk, I wanted to dive into open calls for artists. And I'm curious for those of you out there, what your experiences with open calls, if you like them, if you dislike them, and why. And the reason this topic came to mind this week is because I had a couple opportunities for open calls come my way. One, I am actually going to be jurying a show at the San Diego Watercolor Society. So it's essentially an open call for members to submit their work, and I'm going to be jurying that. And I'm excited to do it, though I always said that I would not ever be a juror for a show. And the reason was is because I never wanted to be the person that made somebody else feel like their work wasn't enough. And I spent some time thinking about it when I was asked, and I thought, you know what? No, this is an opportunity to do something positive, and we can still find a way to communicate this and to make it work. But I never want to make anybody feel like their work is not substantial enough, because I believe that anybody that is putting their heart, their soul into what they do, that there is merit, there is value to that, there is beauty in that. And when I am selecting works for a show, it's just going to be a matter of me picking what happens to voice the story for that day. It doesn't mean that the other works couldn't voice that story for another day. And so I hope to convey that when I go through the jurying process. And my hope is that I can find a way to give some love and attention to even those that are not selected, because I have no doubt that their work will be just as good, if not as good, as the works that are selected. And I hope to maybe change the way that people perceive these things. But it was definitely something I had to think about for a minute before I committed to it, because I have always felt like, oh, I remember what it's like to feel rejected. And sometimes when you're earlier on in your career, it stings a little bit more. Once I got a series of rejections out of the way, I realized that for every yes I got, it took me about 10, 20, sometimes 30 yeses when it came to dealing with galleries or things of that nature. So now I embrace the no's, I embrace the rejection. But when I was younger and earlier on in my career and still trying to determine if this was a viable means of making a living, it did a little more damage at that time because I didn't have the thicker skin that I do now. And so I don't ever want to be the reason that stops somebody from pursuing their dream. I want to be the reason that people decide to pursue their dream. Now, the other way that open calls crossed my path this week is that my agency had an opportunity from one of the businesses they work with. And sometimes these are really big businesses. And there was an open call, and it was asking for work of a certain nature and style. And ultimately, it wasn't the type of work that I do. So I just said, I'm not going to do that. But I got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, when it comes to these big companies, and there's an open call. They present it as an opportunity of like, hey, here's your opportunity to work with us. We're going to do an open call. But as I got deeper into it, I thought, well, is it just a way to get artists to do the design work for you free? Because if I needed a certain design or something that I wanted to sell or whatever, I would have to either create it or I'd have to pay a designer to do it. I can't just be like, hey, all of you designers create something that fits this and this and this, and then I'll decide which one, and that's the one I'll go with, and I'll compensate that person. So it's kind of clever on their end, the way that they articulate it and present it to be to your benefit, when really it seems to be more to their benefit, or at least that's one perception of it. Now, maybe it's a big company you want to work with, and I'm not trying to knock it either way. Hey, open calls are a wonderful thing. I remember when I didn't have a lot of experience on my resume as a young artist, and I submitted work to a lot of jury shows because it was a quick and easy way to kind of pad that resume, get more shows under my belt, learn what I liked, what I didn't, how the industry worked. So open calls can be great because in a way it does open things up to everybody. But I think that there's also the flip side to open calls. And I know that in particular with government related work, because the government is required to dedicate a certain percentage of money to the arts. And so sometimes government related projects actually have high amounts of money tied to them. So I remember a number of times there were calls for art from various parts of the government here in San Diego, like stuff tied to the airport. And I would do submittals, and these submittals would take a long time to do, long, lengthy process, a lot of writing. A lot of times they'd ask you to draw out or like provide an image of what it was going to look like. And I'm like, I'm an intuitive abstract artist. How the fuck am I going to do that? So a lot of times he just ruled me out right away because of the fact that how do I articulate what I'm going to do when I work intuitively with my style? So it sucked in that it eliminated me in that regard. But even for the ones that I tried to do where I could sort of provide context for what it was going to be, I never really got past the initial stage, which always made me wonder if they really looked at it or if they already essentially had the person they wanted to work with and it was just a formality to make it public and open to the general community. Because I have heard stories, and I'm not referring to any one agency or anything in particular, but I've heard plenty of stories over the years. There's a lot of politics that go on in art and in life and whatnot. And it seems to me that in many cases, perhaps there's already somebody that has been chosen or that has the inroads for these things, and that they just try to make it appear that it's an opportunity for everybody because maybe they get some additional spin off the back end of it or whatever. So I'm curious though if you have partaken in open calls, if you've had good experiences, bad experiences, mixed experiences, and what your thoughts are because your guidance can help other artists right now. So drop those in the comments, share your thoughts, your comments, leave any questions, and then join me for my other art talks. I've got an entire series of these talks on a variety of topics, so I hope you will go check those out so that you can help me grow here on YouTube, where I have not done particularly well, but hope to maybe one day do a little bit better than the crap that I have done thus far. So, open calls, try them, experience them, share them, let me know what you think, and I will see you next time.